Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. In this video, we're going to be talking about the job selection process, and also I'm going to give you guys 10 incredible jobs that are in the Air Force, just to give you guys a gauge of what are some of the jobs you guys can get in the Air Force, and maybe a few of these jobs will make it on your list. But first, let's talk about the process of how to get a job in the Air Force. As you already know, the Asvab qualifies you for all the jobs in the Air Force. Not when you take the Asvab, you get to pick from all the jobs, but no, the score you get on your Asvab test will open up certain jobs to you. Your main Asvab score, called your Armed Forces Qualification Test score, I know, a lot of words, but your AFQT score, which is the main Asvab score that people talk about, that gets you into a certain branch because you have to hit the minimum to get into that branch. But then after you get in regards to what jobs you're allowed to get, there are these separate scores within the ASVAB test that they're the ones that gauge if you're allowed to work in certain jobs. Those 4 categories make up an acronym that spell out GAME, because it's all a game. But we have general, which is very broad. Then we have administration. Then we have the test score composite thing that is the M, which is mechanical. And finally the E, which is electrical or electronic. Yeah. So it just makes up the word game, and that's an easy way to remember. These are the 4 scores under my main ASVAB score that help me get a job. So within the greater Air Force, I think it's both on the enlisted and officer side, by the way, but I know on the enlisted side, they have broken all of their jobs into 7 main categories. So the 7 categories of Air Force jobs include operations, maintenance and logistics, support, medical and dental, legal and chaplain, finance and contracting, and lastly, special investigations. Operations is very broad, but you can kind of think of it as a category where any air crew functions will probably fall there. Intelligence fields will fall under operations, and just lots of things are just kind of thrown into that basket if it's helping the Air Force operate. Next we have maintenance and logistics, which is pretty straightforward. There are jobs that literally have logistics in the title, maybe logistics management, no idea, but just know that's pretty straightforward. Feel free to Google it. And then also maintenance, so aircraft maintenance. We are in the Air Force, so we do have planes and spaceships that need to be maintained for us to be able to do our jobs. So that's very important, and that is where those jobs are categorized. Next, of course, we have support, which includes the personnel career field, public affairs, and also security forces, which guard and protect all of our bases and keep both us and our families super safe. Continuing on, we have medical and dental. Who needs explanation for what that category of jobs includes? No one. After that, we have legal and chaplain. Chaplain represents our religious services for our airmen, and so if you're attracted to working in that space and kind of advocating for spiritual wellness, you'd want to work in the chaplain field of the Air Force. Continuing on, we have finance and contracting, which again, pretty straightforward. Finance is how much money as an Air Force are we spending, and should we be spending that much money? And contracting is what companies are we negotiating with to buy a lot of things from them. And that could be as simple as staplers. Like, as an Air Force, what company are we negotiating with to buy like 10 million staples for 1 year of work in the Air Force, just for all of our bases across the world, for all of our supportive offices? We have to buy staples for our staplers. and someone needs to negotiate the price down because we're buying a lot of them. So maybe you want to bring the price down for us because we can always go to the next best offer, and they probably will bring the price down because they want us to buy from them. But that is an overview of what contracting is. And the last category, as you already heard, is special investigations. If there's some funny things going on in the Air Force, like fraud, counterintelligence operations, meaning do we have spies in the Air Force? Are there people giving information about the Air Force to our adversaries, our enemies? They're the ones who are going to hunt you down and kick you out. Now, before kicking you out, you probably will have some legal action as well. So, hey, paralegals, like we talked about earlier, they're gonna be a part of this discussion too. So, you cannot do OSI or the Office of Special Investigations right when you join the Air Force, but after your first, let's say 4-year contract, you are able to apply to the Office of Special Investigations and kind of get to do that role if you would like. And it makes for an incredible kind of experience if you then maybe want to transfer to the FBI on the civilian side. So, how do you create your specific top 10 list? Pretty much, you just start digging on the internet, you take the scores that you got, you start comparing them to the minimum scores that is necessary for each of those jobs, and you kind of create your dream sheet for your recruiter. Now, some other things are also going to need to happen for some jobs. The first one is the Strength Aptitude Test, SAT. Pretty much, it's not a big deal, guys. I mean, it's a heavy deal. See what I did there? Oof. But it just means, can you lift something that's kind of heavy repeatedly, if that's a part of your job? And so when you go to MEPS, it kind of is pretty quick. I don't know if it's supposed to be quick. I hope it's supposed to be quick, but the recruiter at MEPS will be like, here's this thing that is made to be picked up and pushed on top of your head. Can you do it? I think it's somewhere between 40 to 70 pounds. So just, let's say it's 70 pounds, so I feel like I didn't undercut it, okay? So in your mind, guys, you need to ask yourself, can you lift something that is 70 pounds over your head? I'm not sure if it's the same weight requirement for both male and female. I'm not sure, but for now, let's just say, check to see if your job requires that, and or just start practicing now, just lifting something that is 70 pounds up from the ground safely and over your head. When you do this, it'll be a part of a contraption, so you can't like pull it toward you and drop it on you. It's just pull up and then it stays within these vertical bars, and then you push it up. But just, I've warned you, I didn't find it very challenging, and I don't really have any muscle, so you should be fine. But maybe go to the gym with mom, dad, friend, and just see what 70 pounds feels like. So once again, you can qualify for any job you want. Also, some jobs, specifically, 2 that come to mind, will need additional testing. So, the linguist career field, if you're interested in being a linguist and your Asvab score qualified you to be able to be a linguist, you're going to have to take the Defense Language Aptitude Battery Test. That test is meant to see if you would be good at learning languages, not do you know foreign languages. It's a test designed to gauge, will you be able to be taught a language in a kind of rapid-paced environment. And then the next test is the Electric Data Processing Test, which I didn't have the opportunity to take this, but I've only heard intimidating things. And it's a test of about 128 questions that is meant to gauge, will you be good at programming? Like, are you a good candidate to go into our specific niche, secret programming coding job sets? And so I've heard it's very difficult. but I've heard that the 4 categories of questions include something similar to the assembling objects test, where based on these 2 images, which image matches it, but it's, I think, a lot harder. Then we have the algebra and math section, which again will be a higher level than you saw on the Asvab. Next we have what's it called? Like analogies. Yeah, analogies. So a hand to a human is a blank to a dog, which you would say a paw. Get it? So that's an analogy. And then the 4th category, numbers logic. And so the example given online that I saw was like, it'll be blank, like 1, 3, 5, 7, blank. What number comes next in this numbers logic puzzle? The answer is 9, because each number was increasing by 2. So that is the electronic data processing test, or the EDPT. And it is one of the 2 tests that I'm familiar with, or at least I've heard of, that you can take after the Asvab to, again, qualify you for additional jobs in the Air Force. But you do need to both get a minimum score on the Asvab and then speak with your recruiter and say, hey, I want to take these tests, because I don't know if your recruiter is going to be on it, so it's kind of important for you to do that. And now, let's list out 10 incredible Air Force jobs, and also in this list I'm going to include their Air Force specialty code, just in case you would like to look up more information about the job, and also the minimum composite score that is listed to get that job. Some jobs have 2 minimums, but I picked one, and that will be the one we discuss when discussing that job. So first and foremost, photojournalism. The code is 3VOX2, and the minimum in the general category, or the general composite Asvab, is a 44. Now, photojournalism pretty much is taking pictures of both things happening in the Air Force day to day, but also special ceremonies and when we have distinguished guests visiting any of our bases across the world. Next, we have broadcast journalists. Very similar to photojournalists, but of course you're in front of the camera, you're speaking, and you're telling both the Air Force and your civilian peers what we're up to and what's being accomplished by the Air Force. That code is 3NOX2, and it has a general composite minimum requirement of a 72. Next, we have weather. Weather is easy to understand, of course. You are a weather person, a weatherman or a weather woman, and you're not actually reporting the weather like a broadcast journalist, but for weather, but actually you are studying the weather more like a meteorologist and informing our Air Force units, specifically the ones that fly and have to work and operate within the weather. You're letting them know what's going to happen while they're in the air. This department studies the weather. You act as a meteorologist for the Air Force, and you of course inform any departments that need to know what's happening in the sky before you go into the sky. And so the code for that job is 1W0X1, and you need a minimum general composite of 66. Next, we have administration. Administration is different than personnel, which is what we will talk about next, in that it is supporting, I believe, our higher ups. And so if anyone that's higher up in the Air Force needs their schedule managed, needs their events prepared in advance, needs to have just administrative support. So any paperwork that they are handling, their office is handling, and or reports that they need to verify or review before sending it up the chain or down the chain, they will be provided administrative support. And so in that job, you are working with some very important people, and it's very detail oriented, and you learn a lot while on the job being around such influential leaders. And so that job's code is 3F5X1, and its minimum is in the administrative composite score area and is a 47. Next, we do have the personnel job, which is similar to administration in that you're handling paperwork and you're helping kind of the Air Force live and breathe, making sure that it is able to keep moving in an organized manner. But personnel, instead of facing our management, you face us, you face your peers. You help someone like me and of course all of my fellow wingmen who are you could call it entry level or just, still climbing the ladder. You help all of us manage our careers and also manage our training progressions and manage just any paperwork that needs to be affiliated with our file. Specifically, when we're becoming an airman and when we're trying to separate from being an airman, when we need all of that paperwork in the right spot and organized so that we don't get stuck in like, I don't know, limbo for like 6 months. Please don't let that happen. So, personnel, very important, and we definitely appreciate you. And the code is 3SOX1, and they have a minimum administration composite score of 41. That is 5 of the jobs. Let's do 5 more. After that, we have operations intelligence, which falls under the intelligence community umbrella or the intelligence arm of the Air Force. And this job focuses on analyzing intelligence information gathered from a variety of sources and trying to take that information, analyzing it, and trying to put it together in a report so that not only do you just have information, but now you have analysis and intelligence in which, because of this, we believe this will happen. Or looking at all of this, let's connect it to what we got a year ago, and how does that create a picture that makes much more sense, and how can we then make that picture quick and easy to understand for our higher ups to then make a decision with that information. So, operations intelligence does something like that, I think. And if that appeals to you, you are going to need to look up the AFSC code 1NOX1, and they have an administrative minimum score of a 64. Next, we have the cryptologic linguist, which pretty much is a linguist, and it's where you learn a different language and then you do the analytical thing or analytical aspect of the job, which is similar to the operations intelligence analyst, which we just talked about. So you learn a language for anywhere, whatever the minimum is, to a year and a half, and then you translate information and then you analyze it. So let's talk about the minimums and the code. The code for the cryptologic linguist role is 1N3X1, and the minimum general category composite is a 72. Next, we have the premier band. And as it sounds, if you are excellent at playing music, and you would be honored to be a part of a band that not only serves your country, but also enriches the lives of airmen and their families around the world, but also attends distinguished events and represents the Air Force all across the world, then you may be perfect for the premier band. And the code for that job is 3N2X1. And the minimum in the general composite area is a 24. But you need to be very, very, very good at your instrument and maybe even at singing, because I do think they also have vocalists. Next, we have the SEER job, which is where you teach people how to survive, evade, resist, and escape. SEER professionals in the Air Force learn all of these incredible survival skills so that they can provide, let's say, 2-week to 2-month courses to different individuals who are going to be working in these situations, and or their job puts them at risk to fall into this situation. And sometimes I literally mean fall, because if your plane goes down and you work on a plane and it goes down in an enemy country and you survive, you might need to know how to hide out strategically for a while until you can hopefully find a way to get saved, if that makes sense. So if you like being outdoors and camping, and you like teaching or informing others on how to do those things, then this would be the perfect job for you. And the code is 1TOX1, and you do need a general composite minimum of a 55. Last but not least, this is our 10th job, and it is somewhat one of the most talked about jobs in the Air Force. By that I mean, on YouTube, there's lots of chat about this job. Online, on like Reddit and all of the blogs, people love talking about this job. And even at Basic, for anyone who goes in open contract, everyone's like, I just wanna be a... The job is Loadmaster. It's very popular. It's a very, very popular job. And I believe it's because you get to travel so much. Mind-blowing, right? So, a Loadmaster is a person who is trained to travel with any plane that has cargo, and you're the one responsible for making sure that the cargo is placed in the proper place on the plane, preferably in the center, so that it is balanced, because if it's not balanced, the plane can go down. The Loadmaster manages where everything's, where everything is going, and of course, the weight of all of these different payloads or pallets or pieces of cargo. You know all of the weights. You have people at any Air Force base assisting putting all these things on the plane. Of course, you're not lifting things yourself. And of course, we do own very heavy duty hardware or trucks or things of that nature to assist in the job. But the point is that you're responsible for making sure the cargo gets on the plane properly to allow a safe flight. You do get to travel the world, so a lot of people preference this job. The code for this job is 1A2X1, and the minimum is a general composite of 57. Those are the 10 jobs, those are the codes, and those are the minimum composite scores that you will need to qualify to rank that job on your preference list. I'm very happy that you will be creating your list soon, and I do hope that you get your number one choice, but that leads me to kind of the last point of this video. First, no job is guaranteed, so understand that you need to be flexible, especially with the Air Force, where the queue or the line to get in is super long for some reason at all times. So be flexible in what job you get. Don't say you only want one job, but of course go in with a preference and say, I would prefer this job than this, but be flexible. Next, any listed job on your preference sheet must be accepted contractually, or at least that's the rumor, but I think I'm right. But I'm gonna say it's a rumor just to save my own. But that means even if you put a job that you really don't want as number 10, and you could have put a job that you'd be open, like I guess I'd be fine working with it. Let's say you do your top 5, and then for your last 5, instead of choosing jobs that you're like, I guess I'd be fine with that. Instead, you just put on random jobs, just random codes just to be done with it. And then your recruiter after 2 months says, oh, X job opened up. You put it as number 10. And then you say to him, I know, but I just wanted to fill the slots. I don't actually want that job. Well, you put it on your list, so you're taking the job. You don't want that to happen. Now that doesn't sound quite right because I'm pretty sure you can always say, no, I'll wait for the next job. That does sound very familiar. Like, no, I'd like to wait for something else. But they're gonna make it seem like you can't do that. Okay, so maybe you can say, no, I'd like to wait for a different job. I'm a little confused on that, but just know the expectation between you and your recruiter and the Air Force is if a job that you did put on the list becomes available, you're leaving. That is your ship out date. That's a go. Signed, sealed, and delivered, okay? Next, when you do have a job provided to you and then you have a ship out date, then you are in something called the delayed entry program, and it can last anywhere from like 3 to 8 months, and that can be inclusive of you waiting to even get a job, but also sometimes after you get a job, the ship out date is still in like 2 to 3 months. So understand it's a long process, but it is entirely worth it in my opinion, because I'm really, really happy with the Air Force right now. And I'm not even lying for the camera. I am really happy with the Air Force. So be patient, you got this. Second to last point is that the needs of the Air Force come first. And you need to remember that when, once again, being flexible with what job you get. And finally, you may have noticed that I said a word, or I said a phrase, open contract, earlier in the video. Should you go open contract? Wouldn't it make maybe like an 8-month wait to join the Air Force and actually ship off into something a lot quicker, like maybe 2 to 3 months? Wow, shouldn't I just go open contract so that I can leave quicker? Let's talk about that in the next video. Okay? So that's all I have for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was relatively useful. If you did, please subscribe. The next video will be about should you go open contract or not, and what I heard from my peers during basic about them going in open contract. So wait and see for that. Subscribe if you'd like to get a notification for when I upload. Follow me on Instagram if you'd like. Follow me on Twitter if you want some inspiration. Bye.